old and established, um, Christy, but man, I'm thrilled to be here. And in full transparency, one, I want to say thanks to Christy and Bradley. So I reached out to them early this morning and let them know that in the current state of affairs, my two wonderful boys, we found out yesterday that they had come in contact with kids that were positive. And so in today's world, I believe communication is key so that people can make the decisions that are right for them. And was willing to do whatever, wear a mask in a room, not come, postpone, or do this. And so I want to thank them for responding so quickly, and all of you who adjusted your schedules. So I apologize for the inconvenience, but I'm glad that we're still able to meet. And the boys have been tested. We did a PCR with a pediatrician. We won't get that till tomorrow morning, we found out. But we believe in our family's safety is important. So Christy and Bradley, thank you for jumping on this. And I appreciate the opportunity to even be with you online today. Yeah, so this is a great topic. When Christy offered this, I was like, this is going to be exciting. And it's something that for me, tough talks with the boss, I'm going to kind of walk you through how I envision that, and how I approach it. And also I've helped organizations approach it in the past. And one of the nice parts about going virtual is so when we were planning for the session with Bradley and Christy, I told them, I said, I'm not a big slide guy. I'm more about interaction. And so I don't have slides, but what I do like to do is provide resources that people can refer to for their growth when they want to. So, so my plan was in person to give you a handout and then follow up with an email with links. But today, I'll be able to share some things with you online that you can access while we're together, and use, and whether it be now or going forward. So, so let's kind of dig in. And Christy, or Bradley, can I share my screen?
Yes, give me just one moment.
Sure.
You should be good now, Scott.
Thank you, Meg.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to share one of my screens here. Let me know when you can see it.
I can see it.
Perfect. All right, so what I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through the game plan for today. And by the way, what I've done is I've established a Google Drive that you'll have access to these materials. So I'll shoot that to you, either Christy or Bradley in an email afterwards. So the things that we're going through today, you have access to and use as you go forward. But and by the way, contact information is there. If there's any follow-up information or questions you have, totally good with that. Call, email, text. My work email and cell phone are what I use for the majority of my contacts. So feel free to reach out anytime. But really, after I heard the intention and I got the feedback of what maybe top of mind to the members of PYP, my goal here is to provide you guys with knowledge and resources that really can help you as young professionals have crucial conversations. And you're going to hear those words a lot. I'm going to translate tough talks to crucial conversations, and you'll see why here in a second. But really, the session has two parts. We're going to spend just a little bit of time on how to, and in that how to, I'm going to give you resources you can refer back to. I'm going to share some with you on the call today. I'm going to define I'm a big context guy, process guy. So I want to talk about what is a crucial conversation. So we have that in our minds, and then walk through some how-to through tools and resources, and then give you things that you can walk away from and spend more time on researching. And if you want additional help or a conversation, I'm happy to do that. And then the second part, probably the longer part, is taking the feedback that you all gave through your chats and Facebook, and use some of those scenarios to take that learning and the tools that we're going to walk through and have some context around crucial conversations. So we'll do that in a second. But let me, one of the things I'd like to do is just start with a kickoff question. So I'm not going to present the whole time. This is going to be more conversational, but I'd love to know, as we get into this, some feedback on this. I want you to think back to a crucial conversation, and it could be personal, it could be work related, it could be anything. So a conversation that you had that you think went horribly. It was a bad conversation. And I want you to think about that, play it through your mind a little bit. And what are some of the reasons why that conversation was so difficult? Why was it so bad? So open the floor, and I'll share first. By the way, I had So COVID seems to be the hot topic these days. And we had last week, we had multiple people test positive and they were in large meetings together. And so we looked at CDC guidelines and we set everything in motion based on that. We sent communication out. And then we had a gentleman who reached out via email and basically sent an email. He was very upset and he said, if I were in front of the leadership team, I would dock cuss each of you out and say why you effing, how you effing screwed this up. That was, so he sent that to myself and the CEO. And so I said, hey, thanks for your feedback. Let's get together. And so we had a conversation on Monday. And can you imagine going into that conversation? So think about one, that receiving that information, how do you respond? And then number two, what do you say to that individual? And we had an online meeting, and that conversation in my mind went 50 different directions. I planned for it to be really bad, but luckily, while the exchange through email was very difficult from his perspective, in the long run, it ended up being a good conversation. But the exchange was really bad because of just the language and the tone and the emotion. And I'm sure each of you could probably think of some emotional conversations you may have had around COVID, but that's just one top of mind for me. But for each of you, thoughts around that conversation that just went so bad. What were some of the reasons that it was bad in your mind?
I would say for me, sometimes it's people who have totally different perceptions of, what reality is.
Mm-hmm. For sure, different perceptions on reality, right? What you think versus what they think, and you can see it going down two different paths, right? And it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
Absolutely.
Anyone else?
For me, it's the misinterpretation of tones in an email.
Oh, yes.
I'm trying to convey one thing, someone takes it the wrong way with the other, and I tried so hard to make it all sound sweet and kind and everything. Next thing you know, someone's upset with me. Bully Brad's been labeled, so forth. The world's over. Yeah.
Yeah, the world of text, email, chat, social media, right? Tones, as I'm sure we've all had, can be taken way out of context and cause interesting conversations to follow. Any other thoughts?
I think sometimes the unspoken expectations of other people.
Yeah. Yep. In their mind, they have a certain way that they believe it should be or that they want it to be, right? And you're going in to try and discuss different maybe avenues or opportunities, right? And when you can tell that there's those unspoken expectations, it can make the conversation really uncomfortable, right? Because you can tell maybe you're not breaking through or there's not a give and take. And so those unspoken expectations can drive the conversation in a good way or a really bad way. I've seen that one before. Any other thoughts? All right, well, if you think of any, we'll come back to it and we'll keep having more dialogue together. But one of the things that I want us to do is, as we frame this conversation in this part one of how to, one, I want us to focus in on, as we kind of talk about, these tough talks with the boss, I like to flip it, and this is based on a group that I've worked with in the past and has an amazing amount of resources. And there's a book out there called Crucial Conversations, and there's a lot of research they've done behind it. And I've actually used them to teach leaders how to have crucial conversations when I worked at Baptist Healthcare. And it was one of our highest rated sessions. We actually had them come back multiple times to teach people how to communicate effectively. So in healthcare, there can be some pretty difficult conversations, whether it be with patients or sometimes with team members. And so we really spend a lot of time in teaching our leaders how to have these crucial conversations. And when you work with this company you're going to hear about, Vital Smarts, they're the group that owns the trademark to Crucial Conversations. They define a crucial conversation as a discussion between two or more people where the stakes are high, or opinions vary, or emotions run strong. And those emotions could be yours or someone else's, but there's high stakes. And by the way, those high stakes could be just for you, or maybe it's for the company or for someone else. There's a variance in opinions, right? You may think you should get X or do this. and there may be a difference in someone else's opinion. And again, emotions. It could be one, two, or all three of those that make it a crucial conversation. And think about if it's all three, think about how loaded that conversation could really be. So that's how they and I would set the groundwork for how we define a crucial conversation for today's session. And I like their model. And one of the things that I noticed the leaders that I worked with and talked to about this type of training was that they liked the simplicity of how it helped them think through a crucial conversation. And it's not like it's rocket science, but if you look at their model, there's really three parts. Nothing probably surprising here. The before the conversation, the during, and the after. And the before is really how you frame your thinking heading into that conversation. Now, I'm curious, has anyone ever had a crucial conversation, didn't think through, or happened on spur of the moment, and you're in the moment and you didn't plan, but you're having this crucial conversation, you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about this, what am I going to say? And you're making it up as you go. That sometimes can be a tough situation. The ideal would be, right, that you've had a chance to think through how you want to have this conversation. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And then there's the during, right? Notice that's the big piece. It's okay, I'm in the meeting. How do I facilitate this meeting that is important to me and is a crucial conversation? And then the other part that I like is that during and the tail end of that, it's the after. How do you drive to action, right? Typically, if you want to have a crucial conversation, it's because you want something. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but maybe it's agreement, maybe it's action, maybe it's something. But typically, if you're going to have a crucial conversation, it's because you want there to be a change of some sort. So this model, I want to give you just a few talking points. And before I do, what I've put together here is this book on Amazon. I think I saw this morning, I last looked, was like $9. And if you'd like, I'd even buy you a copy. I believe in that much. If you'd say, hey, Scott, I'd love to have a copy, I'd be more than happy to buy you one because it's that good. But you can get it on Amazon. And I highly recommend it. It's a great read. But the company that owns the rights to Crucial Conversations is called Vital Smarts. And what's really cool about them is they care so much about this, that they've done so much research that they have this website that literally by product, resource type, and industry, there is everything from white papers to books. They've got a series of videos on YouTube. They've got tools. They've got so much, such a wealth of resource that you don't have to pay for. You don't even have to give them your email. Go to the website and it's there. And that speaks volumes to me when you have a company that isn't trying to get your email, isn't trying to sell you something. It's out there because they care about what they do and it's their mission. So I like that about them, which is why they, to me, were a great partner and they're still a great resource. There's case studies, white papers by industry, the tools, some of which you'll see, great videos that go deep dive into certain industries, specifically healthcare. So, you know, this is just one that if you want to dig further in how to do this, it's one where I could say, hey, here, go and access these resources. It's proven, it's been researched, and it is a great model. So I've got a link to that in this as well. And then what I did is also, I went out and found, let's say in today's society and world, you like the quick hits. You're like, Scott, I'd really rather not read, but I'd love to get a synopsis. Well, there are two independent people that I found who did a really good overview, about 5 to 9 minutes of Crucial Conversations. One is a visual. Have you ever seen those videos where it's like drawing something out? This video review is one of those where it paints a picture. And then this first one here is a psychiatrist who took the principles from Crucial Conversations and wrapped it into what she took from it and how she sees it married to the psychiatry and psychology of having a conversation. So it was a very good video. And then again, playlists from Vital Smarts is right here. And then I do want to share just one video with you because I think it sets a really good tone, but it also lets you see what resources they have. And these videos that are out there that explain certain key points, only about 1 to 2 minutes. And so I just want to share 1 or 2 with you if you don't mind. And so let me, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to stop sharing. I just want to make sure that as I share this, that the audio is going to come through. So let me check. Share sound, good. Okay, so we're gonna watch this video. This is one of their vice presidents of operations. How do you start? You know, sometimes I say when you have a conversation, half the battle is how you start, right? The first words you say, what are going to happen? The hair's going to stand on the back of their neck, or they're going to be pulled into that conversation. And I love the way that it's framed here. And I think it's just a good learning point to start with today. So 1:42. Let's just watch this quick video, and then we'll do a little bit more learning. Then we'll get into scenario-based learning. So here we go. This is Emily Gregory, their Vice President of Development. So let's take a look.
Have you ever been nervous to have a crucial conversation, feeling kind of anxious because you know you need to go talk to someone about something and you're just not really sure how to say it? You don't want it to blow up in your face. You don't want them to get defensive or angry or sad. And you're thinking, how do I do this? Well, here's my tip. Say that. Start the conversation with that. Come to the conversation and say, hey, I have something really important to talk about. And honestly, I'm pretty worried about it because I care about you and I care about this, and I'm not sure I know how to do it in a way that's going to be safe for everyone. So can you help me with that? Because I really want this to go well. Being transparent, being vulnerable about, I don't know how to have this conversation, but I want to, that is one of the most powerful ways you can communicate a good intent, creating safety for yourself and others to stumble through a conversation. If people know that your intent is good, if people know that your intent is to have a conversation in a way that works for them, they will allow you a lot of fumbles. I've said some pretty stupid things in conversations, and thankfully the other person has given me a pass because they knew that I was trying and that I cared about them. So that's my tip. When you're feeling nervous, anxious, and worried about having a conversation, start the conversation with, I'm feeling worried and nervous and anxious about this because it matters, and so do you. Thanks for watching. Visit vitalsmarts.com/
So let me tell you why I love that video. I have a personal belief that when you have a conversation, it can go so well when you're honest and you're genuine. When you're not honest and you don't approach it with humility, and what I love about what she did is she was honest, right? I don't know how to have this conversation, and so it's important to me and I care about you, and so just know I'm going to do my best, but I might stumble. Sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable like that, but when you are, it opens a conversation in a whole different way than when you go in defensively or offensively. So I liked that tip. The other thing that I want to share that I love about Vital Smarts, and by the way, I don't work for them. I don't get a dime from them, so I'm not trying to go and get you to spend money or anything like that. But what I will show is one of the things I like about them is they produced relevant content. So here at their YouTube playlist, they have a video on how to ask someone to wear a mask. And you know, that's basic, but it's relevant to today. And so they go out and they look for what are the vital conversations that are happening in society, and they often give really good tips and tricks. And I do want to share just one more video, and then I'll be done on videos. But this is one of the authors of the book, and I watched this, and I was just so impressed with how he explained, or how you deal with someone who's very upset that's been asked to wear a mask. And so I just thought this was great. Another 1:53. And so
what do you say when someone blows up on you? The conversation starts civilly and all of a sudden they lash out at you. What next? I volunteer sometimes at a nonprofit thrift boutique run by people with long criminal and drug histories. It's an amazing place. But even more amazing is watching these former cast-offs manage emotional drama masterfully. For example, whenever someone enters the boutique, one of the team asks them to don a mask. Once in a while, the customer will explode. Here's a common scenario. Hi, welcome to the Other Side Thrift Boutique. While in the store, we ask that you wear a mask. The customer responds, I know my rights. This is a free country and I can shop where I want, how I want. What next? It's always best to respond with a combination of grace and boundaries. Grace first, boundaries second. First, graciously show respect. Acknowledge the value they think is being threatened. Then politely let them know your boundary. For example, here's what we say at the boutique. The Other Side Academy is all about honoring you and your rights, and we're grateful you like our store. We welcome you. We also need to keep our team safe. A couple of us have respiratory problems. We might be wrong, but we think masks help. That's why we can't have you in the store without a mask. 9 times out of 10, the customer exhales, picks up a complimentary mask, and puts it on. Remember, grace first, boundaries second. Visit VitalSmarts.
Isn't that just so pragmatic, yet it just puts things into context? It's just another example of how they take a current day scenario of a vital conversation, right? Remember, reason why it's emotional, right? There's opinions that may vary. How do you deal with that when people come at you in a way that is like that, and the emotion is led? And I just like the simplicity of how they share examples of that. So going back to this, resources. Also, you're going to have a link to a Google Drive that you'll have access to this document that I created with the links. In addition to, in that folder, I also have the model, a conversation planner, which we'll talk about in just a second, and this document that we're walking through today. So you don't have to take notes on all this, because what you see here, you'll have access to. So resources. But let's talk now just a little bit about how to have the conversation, and just throwing out some key points that, vital, crucial conversations would walk us through. So that, and I want to focus on more the during than the before, but the before is pretty easy, right? It's prepare. So if I want to talk about compensation, or if I want to talk about working remotely, or whatever it might be, go in with a plan. But by the way, start with the goals that you have for yourself, for others, and the relationship, right? Don't think about just you. Sometimes we stop and we say, here's what I want. But what is the goal that you have for others, or for the company, or for that relationship? And think about it from all sides. My dad was one of my biggest coaches and champions when I was growing up, and it used to bother the heck out of me, but he would force me to look at something from every perspective. And I think that really has helped me become the man I am today, because when I'm working with people and I get an email from someone who's charged and using crazy language, and you can tell he's emotional, what I go to is thinking about it from all perspectives. And that's my dad in my ear saying, okay, he's upset. Don't take it inwardly. Think about it from his perspective. So thinking about goals for not just you, but the situation and all those involved. And then walk through, just a practical thing you can do is walk through the conversation planner that you now have access to. And I'll show you that here in a second. And then last, take notes. If you're mentally strong and you can remember what you want to do, I'm not. Like, I can get flustered in a conversation very easily. So I've got to take bullet points and notes, whether it be in OneNote, online, sometimes it's handwritten, of the key points that I know I need to get across and how I want to do it. And that's what Vital Smarts and Crucial Conversations recommends in their planner. So you'll see that in a second. So that's kind of before, right? Makes sense, prepare. But then during, the key emphasis where they will focus is creating safety so that you can get your problem or your issue solved. And notice when you saw those videos, they were very passionate, right? And what they would say in the book is, what you would read is, start with the heart. Remember your goal. And what do you want for yourself, for others, and for relationship? Go in with that mindset. What is it that you're trying to accomplish, and how do you create that genuine, honest approach so that people know where your heart is? I know that sounds very, for some who are black and white, maybe it sounds frou-frou, but what I would say is, if you aren't truly honest and forthright with where your heart is and why this is important to you, it may be hard to accomplish that end. So building that into is important. And making sure that there's a shared understanding and goal as you're going through those conversations, and thinking about it from the other person's perspective. How would I react and behave if I approach the conversation a certain way? So almost use yourself, think about yourself in the mirror. If I were that person receiving the information, how would I react to what I would say? And then being transparent and vulnerable, right, is so critically important. That transparency conveys safety. I told Christy and Bradley that, look, I'm going to share my situation and why we're virtual today. I wanted to be transparent and honest with you. And that had nothing to do with Vital Smarts. That's just who I am. But I'm a big believer in transparency, because when you hold back facts, it may leave people wondering, like, you all could have gotten together, I talked, and then after, you're like, hey, why do we move from in-person to virtual? I just believe in that transparency provides information for then people to understand and maybe even come to terms with what that situation is and why. Process in the book, it's not rocket science again, right? Share, tell, ask, and talk, right? Encourage testing. what you want to do is see the situation and hear what's going on, tell your story, feel it from their perspective, and then be able to drive towards action. The notion of creating safety, and again, these are just key bullet points from the book. You want to front load and start the conversation off gently, right? If you were to go to a boss and think about that email I got, and let's say someone comes and says, Scott, I need a raise. And by the way, I've had people do that before. Scott, I'm underpaid. I need a raise. That's the line that they lead with. How do you? And I want some interaction. How would you react to that? If someone came to you and said, "Hey, Meg, I need a raise. I don't think I'm paid fairly based on what I'm hearing other people are making." How does that sit with you if someone comes at you like that? And I don't mean you specifically, Meg, but for the group, how did that make you feel?
I'm surprised that they don't say that anyways, because my employees are all volunteers. But the idea,
I need a raise.
I know, my marketing team specifically. It's a lot. There's no time to process it.
Yeah, you're caught off guard, right? And then what do you do when you're caught off guard? What's the natural tendency? Fight or flight, right? That's just how our brain works. Like, it's proven science. So you go into fight or flight mode, not receiving to process. Fight or flight, right, is kind of how you'd react to that. And sometimes defensively, like, who are you? Like, a lot of things can go through your brain when you get hit in that type of scenario. So it doesn't really kick it off. So the more you can create a safe zone by being honest and genuine and starting the conversation off gently really helps. And share your concerns and worries in a way that helps them understand. Keep highlighting the common goal. So let's say if someone came to me and said, "Look, Scott, I love this organization and I want to stay. I want to be with this company for a long time. I've come to realize through friends and peers that I have that are in this position that I believe that I'm underpaid. And so I'd like to talk with you about how we could look at that and understand and see if there's a way to maybe address that situation." Much different than, "Scott, I need a raise. I'm underpaid." Now they've led with, "I love this organization." And hopefully, again, it would be led with, honesty and truth. Let's talk about this situation and what I'm feeling. And I want you to know, because I don't want to just leave. I'd rather see if there's a resolution or if there's something we can do. I would have that conversation a million times over, because that person, one, I hear loyalty, I hear wanting to solve a problem. It endears me to say, "Let's look at this. Yeah, let's take a look and let's have a conversation. Let's see if there are things that we can do to discuss or make some movement on that." Or at least I can share things that we are doing. And try and guess what they're feeling, right? So, if you're going to talk to someone about compensation, and depending on who that person is, do they have any control? How are they feeling about it? Do they, if they said something that you can understand where they might be at and why? So try and put yourself in their shoes to understand how they're feeling. And then the one key phrase that I love from Crucial Conversations is mastering your stories. I always go back to, it's the words. It's not just the approach, it's the words you choose. And they have this notion of really mastering your story. Sometimes that's even scripting your conversation out. And each of you knows how comfortable you feel when you have these types of conversations. If that means literally writing it out. And by the way, my wife is one of those who's not good with conflict. And I've watched her write out literally what she wanted to say to her boss. There's some people who use bullet points. There's some people who don't need it, but mastering your story and how you want to tell it is so important. And then when you feel yourself getting defensive, replace that with curiosity. The one thing that people in my role, and it happened yesterday, so a consistent feedback that I hear from people that I work with is, "You're a really good listener." Do you know how and why that is? And I wish I could say I have some kind of really great Jedi mind tricks, and I don't. But the one tool in my toolbox that I use all the time is asking questions. There is no better way to try and nullify defensiveness than to ask a question and just say, and I've had meetings where all I did was ask questions, and people say, "Wow, you're a really good listener." And half of it is listening and processing, engaging, and then asking questions to understand. And I don't have to really sometimes do anything because they lead themselves to a conclusion by just me helping them think through things mentally. And so being able to ask great questions is an amazingly important skill set when you have crucial conversations. So the other piece in this is, and I like how we mentioned perspectives already, and kind of preset expectations. You know, really checking yourself and how you see others. When you see someone goes quiet or silent, you know, our reaction is to sometimes become more forceful, but silence can actually be a sign that people either are having trouble processing or don't feel safe or don't know what to say. And so you've got to read that situation and sometimes maybe counter with a question, and focus on what you can do to restore that safety in that conversation to continue progress, because they need to know that you care and that it really is a safe zone. And they're going to check that you're listening, and you should be doing that yourself. Am I listening and validating? And that's going to affect how you treat the person during that conversation. And then last but not, you know, last two key points here is just watching for signs of stress within yourself. And if you feel like the conversation isn't going in a direction, it's okay to say, you know, let's take a pause. I need to go gather my thoughts some more. Let's pick this up and let's talk again in later or in the next few days. And keeping your options open as you go through this conversation. You may go in with, I want this. And I can tell you there have been numerous conversations I've had where someone came in and said, Scott, I want to do this. And after that conversation, they end up doing X, Y, Z instead of A, B, C. And part of that's just because as we share information and perspectives, we think one thing, but if we're open, we may actually land in a different and maybe even a better spot. But you got to be willing to step back and explore alternatives. If you go in with, it's got to be this, you know, sometimes we think they have preset notions and expectations. Well, sometimes we do that too. And we've got to really temper that sometimes and be open to the opinions and options that people are going to bring forth in that conversation. So basically what I did here was I took an entire book and tried to distill it down. This synopsis really ties well into those two videos that I shared with you up here on the resources. It really ties these two videos, the book summary and the video review together nicely. And so if you want to do a follow-up, I highly recommend watching those two videos because it goes a little bit deeper behind this if you want to dig in a little bit more. All right, so I just said a whole bunch of stuff. I dumped a bunch of stuff on you, but my intent was to give us some context and theory and knowledge. I believe that as you learn and grow, it's not just about figuring out how to have a conversation. You've got to have a context to draw back on to say, how do I approach it? And I'm a big believer, and this is probably from my days of teaching first grade when I'm trying to teach kids how to read. And even, by the way, people have asked me over time, which are more difficult, first graders or adults? What do you think I would say?
Adults.
Bingo. Oh yeah, because adults know all the answers. My first graders, they were open. They were like, hey, whatever. They may have been stubborn in behavior, but they were at least moldable in behavior for the most part. And so yeah, you know, what I want us to have a context so that if when I'm gone and I'm not around and we may not interact, you've got some learning and knowledge now to kind of guide your thought process and how you do this. And by the way, I've put together this modified simple form, but it's really based on something that I want to share with you here. And this is the Crucial Conversations Conversation Planner. So I just kind of walked you through how to have a conversation. This is literally, and by the way, this is on their website. So it's like I'm stealing anything. You can go download this. I just did it for you. But it literally walks you through that process of this is that prepare, right? What do you do before? You know, where are you feeling stuck? By the way, content issues. Is there a pattern issue or relationship, you know, or is it just an issue? What are you trying to address and with who? Start with the heart. So everything we just walked through, if you forget it and, you know, it's kind of, so I go to church at First Baptist and our preacher has this thing, he says, so what? So if you don't remember anything I said in the last, you know, not at an hour, my takeaway, my give back to you is this form. You can literally pull this form up and flow out your conversation. You don't have to take it with you, but at least it gets you mentally prepared. So this is a tool you can use to frame your conversation. And here you can see state the path, what are the facts, your story, the questions you'll ask, it's all here to walk you through how to prepare and have that crucial conversation. And literally it's built in a way that it kind of flows through the conversation. Not that conversations are linear, but it walks you through kind of here's how and what I would address in the conversation. But the document I created here is just a simpler version of that for those who like a smaller one. So yeah, so what I'd like to now do is we have a few minutes left, and we probably have about, let's see, it's 10 after. I think based on the schedule, we can probably go to about 20 after. I really would like to address some of the scenarios that you guys shared in the agenda that are important to you. You know, compensation was one. So what I'd like to do is build a scenario-based learning environment for us. So I would love to hear if someone is really passionate about a conversation, and by the way, it could be one that you have coming up, or that you think you might have in the future, or that you know of someone. So it doesn't have to be something specific to you. But I'd love to hear from the group. What's the type of conversation we could walk through this process to get a feel for that, and then I can give you some guidance on things I've seen before that work really well that also tie back to crucial conversations. So who wants to give me a topic that you feel really passionate about that you'd like to kind of walk through this scenario, this process?
Not everyone at once. All right, so let's do the heavy hitter, the compensation.
All right, let's do it. So, and by the way, let's make this up as we go, right? So I'm gonna make it up. So, and we're gonna, by the way, we're putting this in as a live example, right? So when we come back, you've got an example in here. So we're building a case study for our own group here. So compensation, where do we feel stuck, right? So I'm gonna assume we probably feel like we should be making more money, right? Is that the case?
Yes.
So I feel like I'm a high performer, right? And based on the market, should be making more money.
I feel like everyone's going to print this out as soon as this is over and just be like, all right, I'm going to talk.
Basically, I'm doing your conversation plan.
I'm like all these, all these nonprofit people are about to go to their executive
I've got lots
directors.
of, don't give my name because I'm sure I get lots of hate mail if you share this, so don't do it. What's the issue you need to address and with whom? So let's just say, so need to address with my executive director. I heard that title.
Yes.
But give me a little bit more. What's the true issue? So, okay, I know why you're feeling stuck, but what's the issue? Like what, tell me, give me, and we're making it up, right? But why do you feel like this is an issue? Give me the reasons.
I think a lot of us have taken on a lot of extra roles lately.
Taking on extra work. One thing I hear often is I take on extra work, but there's not a follow through on any form of appreciation. Is that fair?
I was just about to say not feeling valued.
Okay. Can you tell I've walked through this before? All right, so no follow through on appreciation. And don't feel valued. What else? Anything else? Let's just say this. There are other roles out there that pay more. That's a common one that I see and hear. Okay.
And maybe like the lack of visibility and knowing where you can, elevate yourself within that company.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. So what's your goal? And by the way, the easy goal is I want to make more money, but I want you to think beyond that, right? So I really want you to think about why. Like, do you want more money because you want to stay? Like, what is your goal? The ultimate goal I get is to make more money, but why? Why do you want them to pay you more money? Give me more than just, I want to make more money.
I want to know, I really want to feel valued. I know that we said that earlier, that we don't feel valued, but I think that's the biggest thing is like, what value do you see in me?
I'd like to know that the agency or organization actually just cares about their compensation. A lot of times they'll give out raises with no comp analyses, and then suddenly you're making very close to somebody who is a lower level than you. So why not just go over there when when you're doing 10 times the work?
Girl, yes.
Gotcha. I like that. That was a really good one. And let's just be honest. So sitting on the other side of the curtain, sometimes organizations are like, we love our people, we want to keep them. We want to do something. And so they just pick an arbitrary number and say, we're just going to give everyone, or they're going to make a decision and say, okay, I'm going to give these people, but understanding the rationale it can be difficult. And sometimes it's because they don't have a good one. And they're afraid to admit that, right? But the ability to understand. So going back to transparency, I think people should always be given reasons as to how decisions are made. So the fact that you want to know, I like, and I think that's a crucial conversation in and of itself, to say, help me understand how you make decisions and what I can influence, right? There are factors you can influence, there are factors you can't influence. And so knowing that can help you in the future to understand what you can do to try and influence that. So that was a great one. Other goals, and by the way, it could be for the other person or for the relationship with the organization. So what other goals do you have, right? Do you want the money just to have the money? Do you want the money because you want to stay with the organization? What are your goals?
I feel like a lot of us in the nonprofit world, we're in the positions we're in because we bought into our mission. So it is that we want to stay. We want to do the good that our mission is doing. We just want to be compensated for it.
I love it.
I've heard it called golden handcuffs before.
I like that.
It's like basically you're bought into the mission, and also like the benefits might be really good, but your compensation isn't. So if you leave somewhere, you might be paying $20 for health insurance, but you go somewhere else and it's $100. So they've got you tied down essentially.
Yeah. Yep, I've seen that before too. Other goals you can think of? Does that map it out pretty good? We can always go back.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes, Kaiten.
Hey, so I'm a little bit different than I'm pretty sure everybody on this call today. I've actually never been employed by a nonprofit. And so my work experience is mostly sales based, whether directly or indirectly. And I have, I guess, for lack of better words, I know the money was there to pay me more. And I just kept running into, oh, well, it has to be approved by this person. And I'm like, okay, well, then can we have a meeting with this person? And then it's like, oh, well, and this is a past job that I'm talking about for anyone. So no qualms with what I'm doing now. But it was always kind of like this handoff of, I'm not actually responsible directly for your compensation. And I like would approach the conversation in different ways. Like, here are the things that I've added to the position. Here are the things that I've done outside of the scope of my typical day-to-day. Here are the ways that I've made this better. And, and so, yeah. I think just the avoidance of the person that's your direct supervisor was like a really big hiccup for me. So I think I don't know if people are running into that too.
I can tell you, I feel it, because what happens sometimes, a leader will say, why don't you go talk to HR about that, right? So they show up on my doorstep and I'm like, say what? And so it's that, to your point, it's the runaround game, right? If we keep them running, eventually they'll just stop asking. And right. I'm not trying to be rude, but I've seen that game played, right? If we keep them moving, eventually they may just forget about it. But then what happens, right? That only disengages people, makes them upset. Then they may stop talking about it, but it doesn't fix the situation because there's been no conversation And instead, what could happen is someone could leave because there was no conversation and we just gave someone the runaround. And so I tell people all day long, I'd rather you come and talk to me. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I can solve the problem, but let's have a conversation about it. But not everyone thinks that way, is what I've learned. Okay, so we've framed our story, why we feel stuck, you know, what our goals are. These are great goals, not probably too terribly uncommon from the group. Now let's talk about your story. So help me paint the story, because now your compelling story has to be, why, what are you going to say to the person, whoever this crucial conversation is? What's the story? And go back to what we learned, right? Start with the heart, with your goals, and with your intentions. So I kind of gave you a little bit of an example of a lead in earlier, but how do you share it from your heart? And not just, I want that raise. What would be some things we could say in our script? I'm going to do bullet points. How do we start this story?
Well, as Jenna said earlier, the golden handcuffs. I've been in the nonprofit world for 4 years now, and I've had to have this talk once or twice, maybe more times in my career. But I always started off with just saying that the work we do is inside me. I feel it. And I would like to continue my career growth here if there is career growth available. Really, it's just letting them know that I'm invested.
I love it. Do you think someone's going to walk away from those 2 lines and feel like they want to be defensive?
They haven't yet.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to start, Bradley. It's a great way to start it, because if anything, 99% of the time it's going to endear someone to you, because what are you doing? You're feeding them positivity, right? Remember it says start soft and easy and gently, right? And so you share your heart and you start off with, you know, some great things that really, you know, tee up the conversation for, okay, but now get into it next. If this is where I'm at, what's the next piece? How do you now frame the conversation?
I think you could also put some stuff into your story about things that you've accomplished since you were hired. Like, I keep a little collection of like big projects that I've finished and accomplishments, whatever, to bring up at reviews and that type of thing. Or if you like finished a degree or something, build that into it just to show how you've become more valuable as time went on.
Okay, so let's go back to this now. Now is a good point to insert a question, right? Watch this. During my tenure here, would you agree? Right? Open the door. Now, guess what you're doing? You're involving them in the conversation. You want to get their feedback. Now, what if I'm coming in and I say, man, I feel like I've grown, I've done so much. You know, what do you think? Actually, that's probably better not. Would you agree? It's a yes, no. What do you think? Right? So now, guess what? If it's positivity, right? They're helping you build your case, right? They've said, oh my gosh, you've done these amazing things, blah, blah, blah. So now you're involving them in the conversation. You're creating safety. You're building on top of, you know, your evidence and your proof about your feeling about the company. And you're establishing that. So after you have this dialogue around, you know, what do you think, you know, about my time here? Then now you get into it, right? Now frame it. So, all right, now what's the ask, right? And by the way, so let me go back over to here really quick, just because I want you to feel this model, right? So we've stated the facts, right? You've told your story. We asked a question, but what is the next piece of that story? What's the ask that you have here? So let's frame that and let's put that into play.
Is there anything further I can do to prove that I deserve a higher compensation?
There you go. To earn your trust and also grow my compensation here at. Right? So is there anything further I can do to continue to earn your trust, build my career, and also grow my compensation? So now it's not just compensation, right? Hey, I want to keep earning your trust. I want to keep building my career, and I want to grow my compensation. What can I do? What else can I do to make that happen? And I would break it down. So we can break those down into, is there anything I can do? By the way, there's a common question I ask my people, and it deers, like I ask them whenever I meet, is there anything I can be doing to better serve you and help you? And that question endears so much trust because I'm asking them what I can do, and I mean it sincerely. And here you're saying, what else can I do to build your trust, build my career, and grow my compensation? Now, guess what? You've made a partner in that person. And by the way, the tough part in this is if you get resistance here, what does that tell you? And I want you to think about that. If you get resistance, what does that tell you?
That you're not valued.
Yeah,
They
that
don't
could be an
fully
answer,
trust
right?
you.
They may not trust you, so you got to be careful, right? Double-edged sword. You may get answers that you didn't realize. I would hope that wouldn't be the case, but they may come out and say, well, I have to be honest, I really have a hard time trusting you. With this group, I'd be amazed if that happened. But you also may not have, they may have a different perspective. But here's the thing. The one thing I tell people is as you go through a process, you get answers that then can help you make decisions that are right for you in your career. And I've had to tell people that even when I don't have control over, overarching, decisions around how compensation happens, I facilitate the process, but I may not be the board of directors that approves a 10% increase. So depending on the situation, the honesty factor and where things stand, you'll know, or you should know where the process is or where you stand with that person. So that's a great question. And you'll get answers from that. And then from there, what I think is important in this process is that you got to take notes and pull out the facts, right? Because in the moment, sometimes you may feel deflated or you may feel elated, depending on what's going on. But what are the facts you're hearing? And what follow questions do you think you want to ask or make sure get asked throughout the process? I've talked to people who've done this before, had a crucial conversation, and guess what? They got down to the big ask and a question, but they forgot to ask 5 others. And I've had conversations with people that came back and said, hey, that was really good, but I forgot to ask these 5 questions. Well, that's just because they may have gotten lost in the conversation or they weren't fully prepared. So you really want to make sure you're listening to the facts you hear. And that you've got prepared the questions that you want to walk through. I've got my story, but there may be questions that go down different paths that you want to explore. And then making sure you're also thinking through how to make this a safe conversation. And what am I going to do if that person goes silent? And then in the end, how am I going to move to action? And by the way, some of these we're going to, for sake of time, these are pretty easy to walk through. But how do you, in this scenario, let's say we've had a great conversation, you've gotten lots of information. How do you, in the compensation conversation, how do you drive to action? What are some things you could do to not let the conversation die? Because I've got some ideas, but I want to hear if you all have any ideas.
Mine is key measurements of the prior period, quarter, or fiscal year of what I have accomplished. Because I'm highly measured by funding and where money comes from. And so that's all easily measurable.
Love it. That's great. What are other ways you can move this to action? Don't let them let it die. All right. Hey, this was great. Can we actually meet and create a plan? Like we've thrown out good ideas. I feel like this is almost a good brainstorming session, but can we meet and really capture a plan? I want to make sure that we have good alignment on things that I can do, that you can do to really make this a priority. And guess what? If they say no, what do you know? Right? It's not a priority for them, right? Or they might say, or maybe the action is, well, these are great things. I don't have it in my control. You say, great, well, let's meet with Scott. Let's pull HR in and let's the three of us sit down and talk, right? So you're now instigating action by saying, great, let's create a plan and let's the three of us sit down and talk about this. I've been in that situation. The people that do that are really good, and it ends up turning into a great conversation. And when it's happened and been done really well, it drives action. And I can give you an example. I'm actually, after this, going to a meeting based on this very topic where people were passionate about compensation and had some crucial conversations that is driving action, and really great action. So this tactic is alive and works really well if you have the right conversation. What else can you're thinking that could drive action? Key measurements, follow up, and then another one that I really like to use is, I know there are some unknowns. Let's make a list of 1 to 3 action items we can take to get more info and come back and talk. Right? Again, what are the 1 to 3 things we can do? Let's go get the information. Let's figure out who we need to engage, and let's get them back together. And that kind of goes back to, you can do that in a meeting. You can do the follow-up, having a meeting, but drive them to action. What's the next step? Even if you get them commit to one thing. I just looked down. I know we're over time, and I know we didn't fill in all the boxes here. But my hope is, if nothing else, again, to walk you through how a difficult conversation, when you map it through. By the way, one other recommendation that I have is, if you have a crucial conversation and you're going through a process like this and you're not sure, and I bet you some of you have probably done this, take where how you want to have the conversation, run it by someone. For me, that's usually my wife, my close friends. And so I'll say, look, hey, I'm about to have this conversation. I want you to listen to what I'm about to say and what I'm about to do, and give me feedback on what you think. I did that with my wife this week. I'm like, let me tell you what I did and how we handled this COVID situation, what we're going to do, poke holes in it, help me figure out how to communicate better. And so always go to your people you trust, because they'll give you good guidance on how they would receive it. It's just one data point or a few, but it's going to help guide your thinking. And when you have it in this structure, you'll only be that much more prepared to have the conversation. In case you can't tell, I could talk about this all afternoon. And I apologize, Christy and Bradley. I know I didn't leave. I know there's time built in for questions. And so, by the way, I left no meetings after this. So if anyone can stay and would like to ask follow-up questions, I am more than happy to do so.
I'm just going to go ahead and hit the stop recording button. In case anyone does have questions, we don't have that on the recording.